Hello there! Today's gonna be a fun one because we have something a little bit unconventional to look at today, and it is in fact white coffee. Not coffee that has cream added, which is also sometimes called white coffee, but these are coffee beans that have been roasted so lightly that they are in fact closer to the color white than they are the traditional dark brown. Let me get them. So I have 2 bags of white coffee here, and as you can see on this transparent one, the coffee inside is in fact a beigey white color. In fact, it looks more akin to just grinding up green coffee beans than it does any sort of roasted bean. However, this coffee has been roasted just to a much lesser time and in a much lower temperature than a traditional light, medium, or dark roast. You'll also notice that both of these coffees, well, I guess you can't tell, but feeling this, both of these coffees are ground already, and you'll be pretty hard pressed to find white coffee that is whole bean, at least on a consumer side. This is because due to roasting it for so much less time, these beans, once they are done roasting, have a much higher moisture content than any other like light to dark roast spectrum that you would buy traditionally, meaning that putting these into one of your home grinders is not good. You are pretty liable to damage your burrs or your blades just because these coffee beans are not brittle and dry enough to break apart in a usual grinding capacity. Usually these are pre-ground in industrial grinders that are made to handle these type of beans, and then you receive it ground and ready to produce coffee. Well, I think we should get these coffees out of the bag. I think we should look at them. I think we should brew some coffee. I think we should talk about what white coffee actually tastes like. So let's get started. I'll be right back. I want to give a huge thank you to Aura for sponsoring today's video. One of the fastest growing crimes in America is identity theft. It's so common that I'm sure nearly all of you watching this have been affected by it in some way, including myself, especially during travel and while using Wi-Fi networks and cafes. Aura is identity theft protection, fraud monitoring, a VPN, password management, and antivirus software all combined into one easy app. You might have one of these services already, but Aura is the complete package. They monitor the web for your emails, passwords, and social security number while sending you fast alerts right to your phone and email. I even found several instances of my own info online, which is never fun, but a very important reminder for awareness and safety. So if you're like me and spend a lot of time online or working outside your home, you should protect yourself too. Sign up at aura.com/MDC and get a 2-week free trial so you can see for yourself how many times Aura finds your personal information online. That's aura.com/MDC. And thank you again to Aura for partnering with me on today's video. All right, we've got our coffees out. They look pretty interesting. So on this one, this coffee specifically was for espresso. So as you can see here, we have a very finely ground coffee. It's a little bit hard to tell the actual like grain size because of the color, but this should work pretty well for espresso. Now on this side, we have something that is completely different. The grind size or the recommended brew method was not specified with this. It was just marked as ground coffee, but I'm very excited to report that it is much coarser, so we should be able to do some sort of pour over and or like drip or immersion brew, something that's not espresso with this. Now there's a good deal of variance in the different sizes of these grinds, but I think we'll be able to make this work. The first thing you'll notice when you get a bag of white coffee and open it up is that this smells significantly different than any sort of traditionally roasted coffee you'll ever get. Both of these two smell overwhelmingly like peanut butter. It's a really fascinating smell, and it smells really good, but there is none of that traditional like coffee-ness to these. There's none of that kind of like light florality that you'll sometimes smell in lighter coffees. This is just like you opened up a jar of peanut butter. So I'm very excited to get these brewing and see what the actual drink itself tastes like. Graham, do you want to smell?
Yeah,
it's peanut butter.
I wouldn't say peanut butter, I'd just say peanuts.
Okay, well, as you can probably guess, I broke the Rancilio out and brought it forward. So we're gonna be making some espresso first today because traditionally that's where white coffee is usually used. You won't see a ton of white coffee being used in like a brewing space. It's usually just espresso. Now, interestingly enough, even though this is one of my first times actually messing with white coffee, the first time I was ever actually exposed to it was back in 2015. Now, I live in Oregon. We have a lot of Dutch Bros coffee, and back in 2015, Dutch Bros launched using white coffee. And I think for most consumers, that's when they were exposed to it as well. White coffee, because it is roasted for such a short amount of time, similarly to light roasts, has a lot of caffeine in it. And so Dutch Bros, being kind of a high efficiency purveyor of caffeine and sugar, used white coffee. And that was kind of their whole like marketing of like, this is a high caffeine, really like light flavored, totally different coffee for your drink. And as far as I know, it was pretty successful. I didn't see a ton of white coffee branching out outside of Dutch Bros, which was kind of surprising. It was one of those coffee trends that I kind of expected to take off at the time, but Dutch Bros had it for a while. They might still have it. So it's kind of fun to see it now, I guess, gosh, 7 years later. Time is wild. Okay, but since this is such a different coffee than we would ever use, when dialing it in, especially on espresso, we need to think about it a little bit differently. Now, this has a much higher moisture content than your regular coffee, as I mentioned before, so it's gonna act pretty different. When doing some research online about how I should start to approach this, one of the consistent things that was mentioned over and over again, both by coffee professionals and then also the actual producers and roasters of these coffees, is that when dialing in for espresso, use much less espresso than you think is necessary. Additionally, people are pretty commonly recommending that you don't tamp down your espresso, which all sounds very strange. However, my understanding is that the white coffee is going to expand quite a bit in the portafilter. And if you're tamping it down, if you're using a traditional amount in proportion to whatever basket size you have, you can have issues of stuff getting stuck up in your machine. You can have issues of your portafilter, like basket, kind of over expanding, and you won't get a nice extraction. But starting off today, we're gonna start with 14 grams of white coffee. Now, this is gonna be kind of a more traditional double shot. This is a 58 millimeter espresso basket. Usually I would put 19 to 20 grams in here, but we're going with 14. We'll see where it gets us. And just for the safety of cleanliness, just for cleanliness is what I mean to say, I'm gonna measure it into a little dosing cup here, and then we're gonna drop it in there. I got a spoon. All right, now 14 grams is not a lot of coffee. For visual, that is what it looks like put into the portafilter. Now, just for this first go, I am gonna very lightly tamp this down, mostly to just set kind of a foundation and kind of flatten the bed here. However, I am not gonna press down. So really, I'm just kind of compacting everything very lightly together. We have our bed here. I'm just gonna very lightly just flatten the surface of the bed. So this is what it ultimately looks like. It is not compressed that much, but it is flattened out. Now, I currently have my Ranchillo set with a couple seconds of pre-infusion. So we're gonna let the bed kind of like dampen. And then after that, the espresso will start to pull. And my expectation is that this is gonna run very quickly. My expectation is that this is gonna be a very fast extraction. So we'll see what we get, we'll make adjustments as need be. Also, clear glass so you can see what's happening. I've got a timer here, but we are gonna be doing this kind of based on vibe, at least at the beginning. Here goes nothing. 14 seconds later, we have something that is about 50 grams of liquid. What that something is in theory, coffee. Now, this doesn't look awesome off the bat. This definitely looks like something that is pretty vegetal, kind of a greenish light brown color. Looks like it has kind of the consistency and also appearance of like a broth rather than an espresso. But again, this is a totally different kind of method of brewing coffee. So flavor-wise, this is pretty grassy. It tastes very much like grass. I was scraping my brain for another tasting note. No, but this tastes very akin to now how green coffee beans smell. If you have ever been inside a roastery or have seen like a sack of coffee beans and just kind of stuck your face in there, as I have done many times, that is what this tastes like. You have lost a lot of that peanut butter flavor and you're left with something that is kind of like coffee broth is not a bad way to describe it. It's like a grassy coffee broth. Now, let's at least look at what happened inside the portafilter. So as you can see in the puck here, there was a good deal of expansion with the added water. You can see very clearly that this was not a tamped coffee. You can really see kind of the ring where the water from underneath the screen like dropped down in here. It looks about like what I expected it to. I would like to try preparing a more traditional espresso shot with this. Recommendations be darned. I am going to updose to something closer to a regular espresso. I'm also gonna tamp this down a little bit more firmly and we'll see what we get. It's not a great looking puck. Round 2, we're taking this up to 18 grams. And just a gentle tamping, just to feel a tiny bit of resistance. New puck is ready. go. Now add 50 grams, this time around 15 to 16 seconds, we have espresso number 2, which does not look significantly different, but does it taste different? Definitely a bit more concentrated in its flavor. I like this one a little bit more, if I'm being totally honest. There's a bit more peanut to it, not nearly as much of just kind of like grassy green coffeeness. I'm hesitant to call anything on the top of this crema, but if you would like to go there, this coffee does have a little bit more visually going on. However, flavor-wise, I think the best way I can describe this one is it tastes like a watered down version of like a wheatgrass shot. Like it tastes like it's supposed to be healthy for you, but not in a fun way. This is not a fun, healthy food. In the puck, once more, we saw a good deal of expansion here. You still get a little bit of a central ring where a lot of that water is falling down over the bed of coffee, but not nearly as badly as before, which I think this is a good thing here. Now, as tempting as it is to continue trying to dial this in even further, based on all of my research and the kind of breadth of white coffee material there is out there, this is usually just kind of what it looks like coming out of an espresso machine, especially when you are buying it pre-ground. You have pretty limited control of it, so what you get is what you get. I'm not a huge fan of this drink in this form, at least, so because we have a second grind, let's very quickly do like a little pour over scenario. Let's make ourselves something else to sip, and then let's give some final thoughts about this. For lack of better information, I'm gonna use a pretty standard V60 recipe. So we're gonna go with 15 grams of our white coffee. Now my water is at 200 degrees Fahrenheit or about 93.3 degrees Celsius. We're just gonna go for a normal recipe here. I'm going to end up with hopefully about 250 grams of beverage at the end of this. Do a nice little bloom here. The color of it itself is not nearly as appetizing as your standard coffee color. Now, because this coffee wasn't really ground, seemingly with any specified brew method in total, this is a little bit janky. We're just kind of doing the best that we can. We'll see what we get. That is kind of the curse of pre-ground coffees for what they do for like accessibility of people brewing at home without grinders, which I think is fantastic. It does take away a lot of the control and potentially leaves you in a place where you could end up with a worse cup of coffee than the coffee should actually be. I am really impressed with how kind of like green toned this coffee is. I was expecting it to be a little bit more kind of in the beige area. However, at this point, it kind of looks like pickle juice, which is fun. My final drawdown is just finishing. This entire brew time took about 2 minutes and 30 seconds. And again, 15 grams in, 250 grams of final beverage. It's now in the sink, so I can't really show you, but I did end up with a pretty flat bed as well, which is exciting. We now have our drip coffee. We also have some espresso, the likes of which you have probably never seen before. The flavors of this brewed coffee are definitely a lot more pleasant than the espresso over on this side. However, they are also very, very light, and this is definitely not like a well-brewed cup of even white coffee, which is some degree to the fact that we had pre-ground coffee that was not necessarily the correct grind size for much, considering the variance in grind sizes even in the bag. However, what we do get in here is something that tastes pretty tea-like. When I tasted it, immediately I thought back to kind of like a sencha green tea. I think that's the closest thing. That grassiness has been very softened compared to the espresso into something that is pretty pleasant to sip on. You don't get a ton of peanut in here. It's still there in the aroma, but not so much in the cup. And it's not bad overall. It's not it's not the worst thing, but it's also in the context that we have a very, very strange ingredient here, which is white coffee. Now, I think both of these drinks would probably be pretty divisive. I think, as I have seemingly led on to, neither of these are my favorite. They're not something I'm in love with, and I'm not feeling particularly motivated to drink again. However, I could see a world when prepared differently, some people could really, really enjoy this. Additionally, if like, say, this or something similar to this was mixed into like a lot of sugar or or something like that, it would be totally fine. You probably wouldn't even notice it. I hope this was a bit fun for you. It was definitely fun for me and a learning experience, and I'm excited to maybe in the future try white coffee again. I would love to know if you have any experiences with white coffee, whether you enjoy drinking it or ordering it, or if you perhaps have tips to brewing it at home. Any and all feedback, always welcome and encouraged in the comments down below. Additionally, I want to give another huge thank you to the sponsor of today's video, and if you would like to learn more about them as well as check out that exclusive deal, go down to the top link in the description as well. I think I will pass on this. I will set this off to the side. However, I will go and sip on a bit more of our strange pickle juice colored coffee that we have created, because overall, this is definitely the most pleasant thing we've made today. Now, I'm Morgan Drinks Coffee pretty much everywhere you'll find me online. I'm here on YouTube once a week plus shorts. Additionally, you can find me on TikTok and Instagram pretty much every day. I hope you all have a great rest of your week, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye, everyone.